I am Valerie Abrams, as I was. I'm now Valerie Pilossof, and I have lived here in Bulawayo all my life, except for going to university in Cape Town. And my grandchildren are actually fifth generation here. I have grandparents in the cemetery and parents, and I managed to be here. We had a very good way of life, a very nice youth. I went to Townsend School, Coghlan School in the beginning, and then to university in Cape Town, and I met my husband Reuben Pilossof, who came from Harare, and we married, and we've lived in Bulawayo all the time. I lived in the same house for 64 years. I'm 88 now, so there should be people who remember me, but so many, I have lost so many friends, either through dying or through immigration. But we manage here. I love the life here because I've still got a few friends, and I've got my children here. I've got two sons, Grant Pilossof and Paul Pilossof. Paul is married with two children, and they are together. I've actually got three sons, but Brian emigrated 20 years ago to Perth in Australia. And he's got three children there, and they love the life there. He says Perth is the untold secret. They love it there very much, and they've kept up a Jewish, they went to Jewish schools there, the grandchildren, and they've kept up a Jewish life there. But it's been hard here, because there are now no Jewish schools. My boys went to Carmel all along and had a Jewish education from there. But the grandchildren are not having that, although Paul's wife is converted, but they are very Jewish. We go have Shabbat every Friday night and all get together, and my daughter-in-law is very good about that. My grandparents came to this country from Russia, and my grandfather was considered a pioneer. You know, we got all the badges and things like that. And then my mother was born here. My father only came as a boy of 16, also from Russia. No, it would have been Lithuania, not Russia. And he established, my grandfather established himself as in properties really, and he set up his son Louis Bannett and son-in-law Lionel Harris in Bannett and Harris in a firm in Harare that became a household name, and they're still there. And my mother was born here and went to school here, and she had four siblings, one of which was very well known in Harare, Frida Harris. They were very community-minded people. In fact, I've seen that you have plaques for Lionel Harris, and his son Stan turned 90 and lives in Cape Town. We keep very close contact. And my grandfather had a lot of property bought here in the main streets of Bulawayo that my mother obviously inherited with her siblings, but you know, it went to nothing in the end from that. And my father had country stores, and we lived a very affluent way of life. I was very lucky, and we had a lovely social life with Harare as well, with Habonam. I was very active in the Habonam, and a lot of my friends came from there. I never went to a South African camp, although I was dying to do that, but my father never approved of girls going to camps. But we did go to Harare, every Rose and Founders, and we had they came to us. and we stayed in each other's homes. There was, in those days, there was Ruth Codron, there was Shapiro twins. They all married and left. I think they're still around, the Shapiro twins. The one was married to Lolly Crickler. My husband's great friend was John Crickler, and he was actually best man at our wedding, but of course they're all gone now. I was always involved in, not in a main area, I was always a helper rather than a leader. And but we had the Hannah Senish here at one stage, set up by Rachel Barron. In fact, in this house, she got us all together to do that. And there was, of course, the Weezo, and we had marvellous fetes. We used to have in the City Hall a fete every year, which was wonderful. In the City Hall, too, we received all the Congo people who were running away, mothers with babies who didn't even have a napkin to put on. And we were waiting for them there and took them into our homes till they got established. And that frightened us very much and gave us a taste of what could be. And I remember just liking to have a suitcase packed with my children's things in case we had to run. But things began to settle down, and I must say it's a very peaceful way of existence now. I think it's very frustrating for people to be in business and to work, as I see my sons banging their heads against a wall. But day-to-day living is, I would say, very nice here as an older person. At the moment I'm staying in my home because I just can't face the fact of having to pack up 64 years of living. But I suppose eventually I will take a little apartment. And I would like to stay in this area. There is the Ascot Mews, that we've all owned flats there, and I could live there. But I've got a lovely friend, Val Pilossof, who didn't want to be interviewed, but we see each other most days. We go and have a little coffee together or lunch, or say, what are you doing tomorrow? And people become very important to you here, the few who are here. There's Judy Chitran I'm friendly with, Elsa Roth. They are younger than me, and I wasn't always friendly with them in the early days, but I'm very grateful to have them here. A highlight of my life was when I went to Cape Town University, which was a very special time. We used to go on the train together. Nobody flew in those days. We used to go on the train and have 3 days of fun with all the students on the train together. And I often brought friends home because they loved the idea of Rhodesia in those days. It was more English than South Africa, and they loved coming here. And of course going to the falls, which has always been a highlight of people visiting here. And I studied Bachelor of Commerce, and but met my husband during a varsity back here in Bulawayo, and came back. He insisted that I came back. It was enough in Cape Town. And we married and had 64 very good years together. And had 3 sons who've been a wonderful help and asset to me. They're most caring people. I couldn't live here in Bulawayo without the 2 sons who are here. To tell you about Reuben, his parents came from Rhodes Island, and I would imagine about 1929, and settled in Gatuma, where Sam Hassan was a leader and was my mother-in-law's brother. I never knew her because she died as a very young woman. She's actually buried in Gatuma, and so is Reuben's father. No, that's wrong. Reuben's father's buried in Harare. But Reuben grew up as a boarder from 5 years old and went on to go to Prince Edward, where he became the head boy. And he was very revered as a young Jewish boy who had such a position. People really looked up to him. and but he came from Harare to work in Bulawayo, and that's how I met him. And he remained here, so he was one of the few Sephardic people here. And but of course we always saw the family, and I must say I always loved the Sephardic food. So Reuben also went to Cape Town, but of course before me. He did a BCom CA and then came back here as an accountant and worked for a firm in Harare, Reuben Pilossof. They were a well-known firm. And then he came to Bulawayo to run the Frame Group, and which was a blanket factory here. But as a little sideline, he started to buy property farms and have a few cattle. He always loved that. I think he learnt that from the Cricklers, who were tobacco farmers in Harare. And he loved farming, and he built up quite a big empire on his own, collecting one farm after another, and which of course we lost. We lost 15 farms, which we had to just walk away from. And I wouldn't say that they're in good repair at this as we left them. We lost the farms because of the government, the changeover from the Smith regime to Robert Mugabe, and he wanted the land for his people, and there was nothing to think about. In fact, we were lucky. They took them. We didn't live on the farms. But a lot of people lived on their farms and were given 2 or 3 days to get off a land that they'd lived on for 50 and 60 years. But nobody really, some people were left with land, but we certainly weren't. And in fact, our breeding operation is on residential property outside Bulawayo. It's very easy. It's about 7 miles out, and that's what we use for. And then my sons do lease land from the government and pay a rent to them. In the heyday, there was a thriving Jewish community here. I think in Bulawayo there were about 7,000 people.
Yeah.
Not? Is that?
It was about 3.5.
Oh, maybe in the whole of Zimbabwe was 7,000. And we had a wonderful Savion Lodge that people established. And we always supported it. And I had friends eventually who went to live there, and I used to visit often. And we had the Weezo Fates, and a leading light was Rachel Barron, who really was a wonderful woman in the community here. She kept us going. We collected. If you played bridge, which we did, there was always a blue box that you put your money into. And we were very Jewish. I never found any anti-Semitism in my whole life. I've not ever experienced it. And then slowly people started leaving and going away. When friends told me they were leaving, I would just burst into tears. And I kept feeling we should go. And Reuben felt he was so established here, it was hard for him to move. It was just a tremendous operation to move, so we never did. But slowly the community dwindled. The beautiful shul that we were all married in, my parents were married in that shul, burnt down, and we moved to a lovely little shul that was run for the Reform, sorry, doesn't sound too right, yeah. Reform shul that we still go to. In fact, it's got beautiful stained glass windows that was done by a very close friend of mine, Leonora Kibble. And I love going there and seeing it. We try to keep it, I'm not a leader in any way, but we try to keep it going. There you want the shul when you have to say your yortzeit. We go to Yontavim. They bring a Rabbi Wiener from South Africa. He comes. He loves coming here, and he runs the services. And you actually go because you feel once they've brought him here, you should support him. And we've started making the Yontavim that we used to have in our own homes of 30 or 40 people in the shul. And the girls get together and we have the 2 nights of lovely Rosh Hashanah, breaking of the fast. There's always the right foods, and we've kept it going. But of course it's becoming very hard. If my sons want to say Yortzeit, they've got to get on the telephone and phone the few 10 friends to say, please will you be in shul, and to keep that going. But otherwise I think it's dwindling right down. There's stalwart shame. There was Henry Sommer, who's gone. He could run the whole service. And the other one is Raymond, Raymond Roth, who's really the salt of the earth here and keeps it all going. But otherwise, I can't see. I would be very sad if it wasn't there to go for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Pesach. That's about it. I've maintained my old home just because it's so familiar to me, and I'm lucky enough to be able to do so. And I have 2 people who help me, who've been with me for years, and we do have a security guard at night. I've got a wall and an electric fence and a gate that I have been attacked and burgled by leaving the gate open, and people followed me from the supermarket and into my kitchen, and at gunpoint took away my jewelry off my hands and my watches on my hand. And my husband always used to say to me, don't go with the jewelry, and I would say, well, what's the good of having it? And it just went. But I was lucky enough that they just took what they wanted at gunpoint and walked out again. And
that happened once?
And by the time I could contact my sons, the whole Jewish community was at my gate, the men with their guns and everything, but there was nothing that they could do. And it was a very chilling experience. That I never go to town. I prefer to go to the shopping either at Ascot, or we've got Zonky Zizwe, where we've got a TM, we've got a Food Lovers, and we've got a lovely Brooks Cafe that we love meeting there, and a chemist, and you can do everything there, and I feel very safe. There are guards that let you in at the gate, and with a card so that they can't steal your car. And I must say, I do feel safe there. I don't go out at night. I'm at home. I don't even have dinner at my children at night because I don't want to drive home on my own unless somebody's going to bring me home. Just had a wonderful holiday in America where I went to, I've got a brother who lives in Washington, and I went to a bat mitzvah there. And then I went to my sister, and we went to New Jersey. My sister lives in Dallas. She's married to a Harare man, Harold Beck, who grew up in Harare. And we went to New Jersey to her daughter's bar mitzvah. And then I went to a very dear friend, Tanya Goldwasser, who turned 90. And she had a wonderful celebration in Miami where all her children were, children who grew up here in Bulawayo but have all gravitated to America. So it was a wonderful experience. People thought I was mad tackling it at my stage of life, but I was lucky that I just did it with ease. I went in the best possible way, and I'm so grateful that I had that wonderful time. And even when they got there, when I went to the bat mitzvah, the rabbi asked me to stand up and speak because he couldn't believe there was Auntie Val from Zimbabwe who'd come all the way to be with her family, and he wanted to know how we lived, as I've told you too. I did say to him, if you walked into my house, it's exactly the same as your home here.
So this is just a view of the beautiful garden at Val Pilossof's home. Large garden with this huge fir tree and Some very beautiful flowers over there. And she's got apparently some great avocado trees. This is Bulawayo in 2026. This is the inside of Val Pilossof's home with a lounge, dining room, and the entrance here.
Go to the entrance hall to see Reuben.
There's a picture here of Reuben. That's Reuben Pilossof. And another little study over here. And then we're coming out on the veranda, and Val's sitting here having her tea. Oops. And the beautiful garden in the background.
Worry is medical here. If one should take ill, you do feel you often have to get out of here. And it's very frightening, and if you haven't got people to go to in South Africa, you can't manage. And I find that day to day a doctor is good, but not for bad things that can happen. And that is a worry here. I've led a very privileged life here and been very lucky. And I hope, just pray it can continue like this, because I wouldn't have the courage to start again anyway at my stage of life. So I hope we are together, the few people who are left here, that we can remain as we are. A lot are people are still going, and or they're commuting, I would say. So a lot of the time, people you rely on are away. But otherwise, day-to-day existence is very encouraging here.